Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that you can't say a single word. No voice, no texting, no writing, no way to tell someone there's something dangerous behind you. Now imagine that your survival depends on it. It sounds impossible. After all, words feel like the only way humans can truly communicate. But here's the strange part. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors probably lived in exactly that world. They had no language like we do today, no conversations around the campfire, no names for animals, no stories told with sentences. And yet they hunted together, protected one another, raised children, shared food, and somehow built the foundation for everything humans would later become. So how is that possible? How do you warn someone about danger without the word danger? How do you ask for help without the word help? How do you teach another person to make a stone tool when you can't explain a single step? The answer changes the way we think about language itself, because speech and communication are not the same thing. Most of us imagine prehistoric humans as confused people standing around making random noises, pointing at things, and hoping everyone somehow understood basically the world's first awkward group project. Movies have repeated that picture for decades, but the more scientists learn about human evolution, the harder that picture becomes to believe. Our ancestors were surviving in dangerous environments where one misunderstanding could mean death. A group that couldn't communicate clearly wouldn't last very long. Maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, when did humans start talking? Maybe we should ask, what does it actually mean to communicate? Communication is not about making sounds. It is about changing what another person understands. Think about it for a moment. If someone points toward a burning building, you immediately know where to look. If a friend suddenly freezes and stares into the bushes, your heart starts racing before they say a single word. If someone smiles at you from across a room, you understand something happened, even if neither of you speaks. Meaning has already traveled from one mind to another. The words never did the real work. They simply made the process faster. Long before humans invented language, they already had something even more important. They had minds that could understand other minds. Researchers call this ability shared intentionality, knowing that another mind is paying attention to the same thing you are, and knowing that they know it too. A researcher named Michael Tomasello has studied this for years, and his work suggests this ability might be one of the biggest things separating human communication from every other animal on the planet. Basically, humans figured out mind reading way before we figured out talking. Imagine two early humans walking across an open grassland hundreds of thousands of years ago. One suddenly notices movement hiding in the tall grass. There isn't a word for lion. There isn't even a word for run. But there doesn't need to be. His entire body changes in an instant. His eyes lock onto one spot. His muscles become tense. His breathing slows. He stops moving. The other person notices all of it. Without a single sound, both of them now understand the same thing. Something is wrong. That moment may not seem impressive today, but it contains one of the greatest inventions in human history. One brain has successfully changed what another brain knows. This is where communication truly begins. Not with speech, not with grammar, not with the first word, but with shared understanding. Once humans could do that, almost every part of the body became a communication tool. Eyes could redirect another person's attention. A raised hand could stop someone from walking forward. A quick movement could show where food was hiding. A frightened face could spread through an entire group faster than any spoken warning. The body became humanity's first language. It was simple, but it was powerful. You didn't need a dictionary to understand someone pretending to throw a spear. You didn't need a sentence to recognize fear on another person's face. The meaning was visible. Communication wasn't trapped inside sounds. It lived in movement, expression, and attention. Slowly, these signals became more familiar. A certain gesture might always mean come here. Another might always mean wait. The group didn't need to invent words overnight. They only needed to keep sharing the same meanings again and again. Little by little, human minds were learning something extraordinary. They were learning that ideas could be shared. And once that happened, survival became more than individual intelligence. It became shared intelligence. But there was one problem that this ancient communication system could never solve. What happens when the person you need to warn can't see you? The body was an incredible communication system, but it had one huge weakness. It only worked when other people could see it. Imagine your group is spread across a forest. Thick trees block your view. Your friend disappears behind a large rock. Suddenly, danger appears. Pointing is useless. A frightened face can't travel through the trees. A raised hand means nothing if nobody's looking. Turns out, waving your arms around is a terrible plan. When nobody's watching a lesson, every substitute teacher eventually learns too. Now imagine it's night. The campfire is dying. Darkness covers everything. Your eyes can barely see the people sitting a few steps away. The body, which had carried human communication for so long, suddenly becomes almost invisible. And there was another problem. Early humans rarely had free hands. They were carrying children, holding food, climbing rocks, making tools, throwing spears. A communication system that depended only on hands would constantly compete with survival itself. Hard to point at a lion when both your arms are full of berries and a toddler. So nature already had another solution waiting. The voice, not words, just sounds. Long before humans could say complete sentences, they could already make different kinds of calls. A loud, sharp cry could warn the group that something was wrong. A softer sound could help people stay together while moving through thick grass. Different tones could show fear, excitement, pain, or comfort without explaining anything at all. You don't need language to hear panic in someone's voice. You don't need a dictionary to recognize a cry for help. Even today, a baby can tell you exactly how it feels before learning its first word, usually at 3 in the morning, and usually very loudly. A frightened scream instantly grabs your attention, no matter what language you speak. Some messages are older than words themselves. But here's the surprising part. Scientists don't think gestures and sounds were competing against each other. They were probably working together. Imagine an early hunter spotting danger. He doesn't just shout. He points toward the bushes. His eyes stay locked on the same place. His body becomes tense. His voice becomes louder and sharper. Every part of his body is sending the same message at the same time. None of those signals has to carry the entire meaning alone. Together, they become much harder to misunderstand. In many ways, early human communication probably looks surprisingly familiar. Even today, when you tell someone an exciting story, your hands move without you noticing. Your face changes. Your voice rises and falls. You lean forward at important moments. The words are only one part of the message. The rest of your body is still joining the conversation, whether you asked it to or not. But even this wasn't enough to explain the biggest mystery. A warning call can tell someone that danger is nearby. A gesture can show how to throw a spear. But how do you talk about something that isn't happening right now? How do you tell someone where the animals were yesterday? How do you plan tomorrow's hunt? How do you teach a child something they can't see? At some point in human history, communication made an extraordinary leap. A sound stopped being just a sound. A gesture stopped being just a movement. They became symbols. Imagine teaching someone how to shape a sharp stone. At first, you might have to demonstrate every single movement again and again, but after repeating the same lesson many times, something changes. A small hand movement now reminds the learner of the entire process. A short sound no longer copies the action itself. It stands for the idea behind it. That is the hidden power of symbols. The meaning is no longer inside the movement. It exists inside the minds of the people sharing it. Some scientists think this shift connects to deeper genetic changes. Studies on genes linked to speech and language ability suggest that changes affecting these genes may have been happening long before complex speech ever existed, which means, in a strange way, evolution was quietly upgrading our hardware long before we had any software to run on it. This may have been one of the greatest turning points in our history, because the moment a signal can stand for an idea instead of an action. Humans are no longer limited to talking about the present. They can begin talking about things that aren't even there. And that changed everything. Once humans could use symbols, something incredible happened. For the first time, they could share ideas that didn't exist in front of them. A hunter could point toward an empty valley and explain where the animals had been yesterday. Someone could warn the group about a dangerous river they hadn't reached yet. A parent could teach a child how to make a tool before the child ever needed to use it. Communication was no longer trapped in the present. It could travel into the past. It could reach into the future. That may sound like a small change, but it completely transformed what it meant to be human. Think about every animal you've ever seen. Many animals can communicate. Birds warn each other about predators. Wolves call their pack together. Monkeys have different alarm calls for different dangers. Bees can even show the location of food. But almost all of those messages are about what is happening right now. Humans became different because we learned to share experiences across time. One person discovered which stone broke into the sharpest tools. Another learned where water remained during the dry season. Someone else discovered which plants were safe to eat and which ones could kill, usually by trying it first, in what was probably prehistory's least fun taste test. But without communication, all of that knowledge would disappear when those people died. With communication, every discovery became the group's discovery. Knowledge stopped living inside one brain. It started living inside many brains at once. Some of the earliest physical evidence of this comes from Blombos Cave in South Africa, where engraved pieces of ochre dated to roughly 73,000 years ago suggest early humans were deliberately creating and passing down symbolic patterns. In other words, someone was already doodling on purpose, and their friends knew exactly what it meant. That may have been humanity's greatest advantage. Generation after generation, people no longer had to start from the beginning. Children could learn what their parents already knew. Parents could learn what their grandparents had discovered. Every generation added a few more pieces to the puzzle. Slowly, those small pieces became something much bigger. Better tools, safer shelters, smarter hunting, stronger cooperation. Then villages, then cities, then civilizations. The first great human invention may not have been fire. It may have been the ability to share an idea. But here's the strange part. That ancient communication system never disappeared. Most people think speech replaced body language. It didn't. Speech simply joined it. Even today, you almost never communicate with words alone. Imagine someone looks at you and says, "I'm fine." Do you immediately believe them? Probably not. You look at their face, you notice their eyes, you listen to their voice. You pay attention to the pause before they answered. Sometimes, those tiny signals tell you far more than the words themselves. Think about texting. Why do we use emojis? Why do we stretch words like no or okay? Why do voice notes often feel warmer than plain text? Because something important is missing. Words alone cannot carry every emotion. A plain okay can mean anything from sure, no problem, to we need to talk, and somehow you always know which one. So we naturally rebuild the older system. We add expressions, Tone, timing, images, reactions, even memes work because thousands of people already understand the shared meaning behind a single picture. In a strange way, we are still communicating much like our ancestors did. The tools have changed, the brain has not. Maybe that's why face-to-face conversations still feel different from reading a message on a screen. Your brain isn't just listening to words, it's constantly reading expressions, movements, pauses, and intentions without you even noticing. That ancient machinery is still running beneath every conversation you have. Which brings us back to the question we started with. How did humans communicate before speech? Not with one simple system waiting to become language, but with an entire network of faces, hands, voices, gestures, expressions, and shared understanding working together long before the first true words were ever spoken. Language didn't suddenly appear one day. It grew from millions of small moments when one human successfully changed what another human understood. Every glance toward danger, every hand showing how to shape a stone, every warning call echoing through the trees, every shared idea made the next one easier. Eventually, those invisible connections became stories, plans, traditions, promises, history, everything that makes us human. So the next time someone points instead of speaking, smiles without saying a word, or you instantly understand what another person is feeling before they even open their mouth. Remember this, you are not watching communication fail. You are watching the oldest language humanity has ever known, a language older than writing, older than civilization, and perhaps older than our own species.